Alrighty, so we got our 2 injection pumps, our rebuilt and our old one. We're gonna have to change some parts around. As you can see, not everything is the same. This is the fine tooth gear, I believe off like 98 year trucks. My truck's 2002. It's gonna use the newer gear, which is the coarse tooth one. So what I'm gonna do, or what I've done already, is I've got these both lined up to 8 degrees. I was trying to find some identifying marks. I see that this one has like this little notch there. I didn't see anything on this one like that. I do see this dot. This dot and that dot are poorly lined up. It might just be that's how you line it up. And I guess that's the lineup for that one, and that's the lineup for this one. This one lines up much better. Anyway, now that they're both at 8 degrees and both sitting at a level spot, we can see that this is the top, side bolt, etc. So what we're gonna do is just remove one, put it onto the other without trying to turn the gears. And that'll be part 1 of what we're doing. We're also gonna have to put the breather from one to the other. We're also gonna have to pull this cover off, move the sensor, and then we're missing a spring. I'm gonna have to look over it to make sure that's the only things that we're doing here. But we'll start with this and see where we get. And for the record, this is a 14 for this. Check this one, also a 14, so, yeah. I don't really know a better way to take these off, because if you use a ratchet, they spin, and I didn't want to crimp the gears with a vise. Okay, we have taken up. Please, look up. Please. All right, we're gonna do this for a while until we get to come off. Oh, there it is. And that's our fine tooth gear. Interesting, dot was there. I'm gonna have to see how that lines up, double check before I remove that one. And basically what we're gonna say is that's lined up. This is to 8 degrees right now. They're both set to 8. The dot's here on this one, the dot's here on that one. And we're gonna do that. Hopefully line them up. We should be good to go. We're gonna use the hardware that was on this one for this one. Just transfer the physical gear, hand tight it first, and make sure we can just swap the gear and use the existing hardware, hopefully. Alrighty. These were a lot easier to come out than those on the rebuilt, so I guess they tighten them a fair amount more. Please. Thank you. Let's take a look. Dots are there on that one. Dots are there on that one. So pretty similar. We're gonna take this and make sure that fits about right. Okay, so other thing I do want to mention, I swapped them. There is a bit of play. So what I'm gonna do is try to stop it in the middle, split the difference, and then tighten them up. Try to center it as best as possible. All right, we don't really have a torque spec anywhere, so we just gave this like a, just a little bit to cinch down there. These spun right off with this drill. These took a little bit to come off on this one. I don't want to strip these. They're grade 8, going into steel. Like if I have a problem, it's not worth it at all. So the next thing we're gonna change we're gonna have to rob that piece off and get that onto our new one. Alrighty, so it looks like it's gonna be a 12. We're gonna need a little bit more extension here. Anyway, we could probably just get a 12 opening on there and hit that, which will probably just end up doing that. Let's grab our 12, put that on there. Let me break that loose and come back to the video. All right, so that was way tighter than that needed to be. I don't think there's anything there. Anyway, there is this little rubber O-ring thing at the top. It goes through this. So we'll be installing that right here. Alrighty, so there was a little washer down there. We did have to get that. Now this piece is in. So I think the next thing we're gonna do is just give this a look over, make sure we're not missing anything else. The other spring is gonna have to be transferred as well. So we'll take a look at what's involved for doing that. And then of course the sensor. All right, the next thing that we're gonna work on is getting the, converting this into double spring, because obviously the engineers felt the need to put 2 springs on it. Why the rebuild didn't come with a double spring, I won't know. But at least we have our core to steal parts from. I'm assuming we're just gonna go with the needle nose and try to unhook this. Alrighty, so we just grabbed it and then snaked it out of there, hooked it through the back, pulled it with the needle nose, carefully sat it into this little tray. Feels about right. The next thing, I think we're gonna move to getting the sensor off. I believe you cannot just unscrew this. I believe you have to remove this through here, unsnake it off of a little pedal mechanism, and then carefully thread it back in onto that mechanism. I'll show you that when we get to there. Of course, we don't have to break open our rebuilt unit, which is a little ridiculous, but it is what it is, so. All right, so we're gonna remove this side plate here in order to have access into here. There should be a little foot underneath that interacts with this sensor. This is a 5mm Allen. See what it looks like in there. All right, so just fair warning, these are extremely tight in there. Make sure you use a 5. It is a 5, and get a very snug fitting 5 at that, because you actually have to put quite a bit of leverage on this. I ended up using a wrench in doing that. If you have a 5 socket, it'd be better. Of course, I have every size but a 5, so that's the way that goes. Okay, so behind this one plate, you can see where this foot interacts with the sensor. I believe this is set at the height for the sensor, so you have to unscrew it from here, not from down here. We'll try to slowly unscrew this. We may have to unbolt this, relieve this to snake it out, because these are interlinked. Also, of course, this is some ungodly size. I have a 22 wrench that doesn't fit, so we had to go with one of these adjustable. And then that was also way too tight, so that was exciting. So we'll slowly turn this and keep an eye on it as it comes out, and I'll let you know what you have to do once I get there. Alrighty, so it looks like what you have to do is, after you unscrew this to a point, you do have to release it, and there's a little peg that you got to get it to hop over. Okay, because right now we're just spinning around aimlessly and you can't pull it out. There we go. You gotta finagle it. That's the pin. So when you put the new one in, you gotta sneak it behind the pin and then tighten it in there. Hopefully that makes sense. So when you're taking it out, loosen it all the way up, release that, snake it out. So please do be careful. Do not spin this middle bolt, because when you spin the middle bolt, you'll adjust the foot tooth in and out. So be very careful. Do not turn that middle, because it's purposely set. At least for this pump, my rebuild did not come with a new sensor, so I'm going to be trusting this measurement. Alrighty, yeah, we see plenty of Alrighty, so this is on our new / rebuilt pump. Gonna have to get this out of here. Of course, this will be exciting. We'll go with that little needle nose anyway. I'll have to open up this one, see what it looks in there. Should be brand new in theory. Put our new old sensor in, and we'll go from there. So we've taken all our bolts out. Alrighty, we will snake our piece in there. And get the sensor in there. Alright, we have added our new sensor, our old sensor. We'll screw that in. You can see it just kind of go to like an adjusted height, which is kind of interesting. So. Seems about right. So maybe something I should have checked too is how much slop before engagement. This is like not even, like probably less than a hair, or about a hair. And then it only goes up to about there. Full travels up to there. So, but once again, it's not like there's 9 miles of slop and then it grabs it. It's like right there. I believe this is just a cold start mechanism. I could be wrong. I think this just, if the engine's cold or whatever, it like tells us to just bleed a little bit extra fuel in there, I believe. The only other adjustment we'll need to make is now this is started on the wrong side. We're gonna loosen this, clock this down so it's facing that way instead of straight across. Or maybe even cock it that way a little bit, because I believe the other one was that way. So, yeah. Alrighty, that's been adjusted over and tightened. And then we'll get our new cover, put our cover on, put our bolts in back in the same way, and then snug them all up as evenly as possible and give them a little extra at the end. Unfortunately, I don't have any torque specs for any of this stuff. Alrighty, so we went around. I tried to snug that to the point where the green would have lined up, and then try to apply that same amount of tightness to the rest of them with that logic. Should be good. The only other thing I do want to change, if you look at this is kind of bent, like real bad. And then on my other pump, it's straight. So I'm assuming somebody dropped this or bent it. Maybe it's just like that on the older pumps. But my other pre-existing pump, it's bone straight, and this one's kinked pretty bad. So we'll be changing this little piece right here. Alrighty, so we've broke this loose. And we'll swap in our other one. Ready? So we're gonna come over to this guy. Get this on there. If that wants to cooperate. Get that off of there. Up. See? Straight. We'll clean up this bolt. This bolt looks like death. So I was double checking all the linkages. They seem to lock this one up with the nuts and stuff, so it's like set somewhere. On the other one, my old pump is adjustable according to the vacuum. They locked this one in place. I'm sure it's for a reason, so I'm not gonna mess with it. The only interesting thing, missing the C-clip. So I'm gonna steal that off my old pump. But if you look, see, and it'll even open the throttle a little bit, I believe. So once again, they locked the other one in place with all the nuts and stuff, and then like marked them with paint, so we'll leave it alone. But we are going to replace this. So now we got that on there. But once again, this won't even move. They got it bottomed out on the screws, so it doesn't move at all. That's the throttle. There's no way for it to move. So, other than that, I think we're ready to go. Just remove all these. I did this so I could see where the hell they are, so I don't accidentally lose my mind. Should be ready to go for it. We will have to repair this. I broke this pulling it out of the truck. The connector's actually still stuck in the other connector, so maybe we'll thread the pin, push it back together, and maybe we'll be good to go.